I have literally recorded this episode 3 times. For whatever reason, either I didn't like it, there was interruptions. We're getting through this today, okay? It's going to satisfy me and we're going to be great. What we're going to talk about today is sex. So if you don't want to talk about sex or don't want to hear about sex, this is going to be the episode that you're going to want to go ahead and skip, okay? Now that all the Baptists are gone, I thought of something that I do, and I think everybody does it, but then it got me to thinking of all kinds of things. So come down this rabbit hole with me. Something that I do is when I see you with your spouse, I picture you having sex. And not in a porny, dirty way, not in a way that, turns me on or, gets me going or makes me feel good. It's not even like that. It's just, and it's not in a judgmental way either. It's just an assumptive way of like, I wonder who's on top. Or I wonder what they look like in the act. It's not, like I said, it's not dirty in any way, shape, or form. Which got me to thinking about even more about sex and how I feel about sex, how I was raised about sex. And it's amazing that I have sex at all based on how I was raised. Teeny tiny town in Western Oklahoma. When I mentioned Baptists earlier, there's a reason. Baptist church. I was raised to believe through the church, through family friends, through family, if you liked sex and you were a woman, you were a slut. It was for one reason and one reason only, and that was to make children. Men could like it. Men like sex. But if you like it, you're dirty. Imagine growing up thinking that your whole life. With all the feelings that you have, because I love sex. And I feel like some of the people that told me that if I liked it, I was a slut, didn't like sex and they were doing it wrong. So they just assumed everybody felt that way. And obviously we know if you're doing it right, there is nothing wrong with it. I still remember there was like some revival that had happened at church and they brought all of the kids together. Mind you, I was probably, I think I was 9, and we're all sitting in this room with a man who had to have been 75, telling us that even if we thought about sex, we had committed the sin of adultery. I'm 9. I don't know that I knew much about what even sex was at that time, but I'm terrified to think that if I even think about doing it or I imagine myself doing it, I've already committed the sin of adultery. I'm pretty much going to hell. And I know what you're thinking, man, how awkward to be sitting there hearing that, with boys sitting next to you and stuff. No. The boys were in the fellowship hall playing dodgeball. So it was just the girls that needed to know that if they ever thought about this, that it was considered adultery. And that later in life, as a teen, I remember being told that it was almost like our duty. It was a part of serving our husbands was to have sex with them. It wasn't even about whether we wanted to or not, what we thought was good, what we were, none of that was mentioned. It was solely, we're a wife, and that's what we were created to do, was to satisfy man. There wasn't anything about our satisfaction, because then that would have been inappropriate to even talk about it in any kind of way. Well, I get older, and once again, no safety of it is talked about. There's no sex ed in a teeny tiny town in Western Oklahoma. It's just the biology of it all that you're taught in science. There is no, you should probably think about condoms. You should probably think about birth control. You should probably think about, no. None of that that I recall. I may be corrected by some, fellow former classmates. I don't remember there being any safety talk whatsoever. You were just picking up pieces from it was context clues. That's basically how you got your knowledge of sex, was context clues. So you were grabbing a little bit from a conversation you hear, grabbing a little bit from a movie, grabbing a little bit from some corn, grabbing a little bit, from what you could, even from like hearing high school boys talk, you were trying to gain an education as to what you were supposed to look like, what you were supposed to, feel like, what you were supposed to, all these things. And meanwhile, in the back of your mind, thinking you may go to hell for even thinking about it. I hate how dirty it made me feel my whole life. Like, because I loved it, I was a slut, whether I had ever had it yet or not. And once I had had sex and realized how much I actually loved it and how much it was good. I mean, it was made to be such a bad thing. So in my little brain of when I meet people and I'm imagining them having sex, it is solely, I think, in my mind of just like putting the pieces together. Not literally, but like I think of it in an educational way. And maybe that's because I wasn't allowed to think of it in an erotic way, which I still think of it in an erotic way. Is that making sense? I remember one time I was sitting in a church service, and this was full of grown women, like I had already been married, grown women. And I remember the woman up front said that she raised her daughters to never tell their husbands no. It did not matter what was going on, how they felt about it. They were raised to never tell their husbands no. Do you know how fucked up their life probably is now? In my brain in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I've told my husband no a few times. I must be a terrible wife. That is so fucked up. Can I tell you, that was the beginning of me being like, whoa, wait a minute. What are we talking about here? Excuse me. That what I'm going to try to do with my children is I'm going to do my best to make sure that I have boys, which I know that raising boys and girls is different, but I feel like the knowledge is still the same, though what we should be trying to be teaching. So the best thing I'm going to do is, one, like any parent, we're going to try to not make it embarrassing, right? I mean, I wasn't even approached at all about it, like, anything. I think it was like, she'll figure it out as she goes along, which was not the way that I feel like it should have been handled. It almost felt like everything was unapproachable with questions too. If you asked questions, that was wrong. That was dirty. You didn't even need to be thinking about it, remember? Because you'd go to hell. But like there was not a comfortable place. And I know every parent wants to be that comfortable place for their kid where they can talk about anything, including this. And I want to make it the least amount awkward as possible, to where no question is out of bounds, whatever it may be. Whether I even like to do that, whether I'm into that, whether I've ever done it, whatever. Be like, man, that's a really good question. Let's look into that. Or, I highly doubt my boys are going to come to me. I'm the mom. I really think they're probably not going to come to me. But I just don't want them to fall into the trap that I saw a lot of guys my age when we were trying to figure out what sex was, to look at porn. Because that is such a misrepresentation of what it all is. Is it fun? Is it cool to watch? Is it educational in some ways? Yeah, it is. I just don't want them to think that that's the norm, that that's what it is. And I'm also not going to be one of those parents that's like, it's got to be with someone you love. It's a special thing. It's an intimate, yeah, it is one of the most intimate things you're ever going to do. And it also can be one of the most fun. So I don't want it to be shameful. I don't want it to be guilt. I don't want it to be a feeling of insecurity. I don't want it to be a feeling of not knowing. There's got to be some sort of knowledge there to feel confident. And confident without thinking because you watched porn. So my biggest takeaway from what I learned is to unlearn everything that I learned. Not saying I know it all, and not saying that I'm going to even teach my boys the correct way about sex and what it should be. But I'm going to take a different approach, for sure. That the safety part of it is going to be more important than anything. Because it was just kids telling kids other stories of things they had heard, and we all know that that is a terrible way to try to get some sort of education, is just catching on by what you're being told. Heaven forbid you don't date a guy who is just a total douchebag and has no idea and is also telling you the right and wrong way of how this should all go down too. Right? So that's the rabbit hole that I went down when I started to think about, man, I don't think that my raising is why I think that when I meet you and your spouse that I'm automatically thinking of that. It's just a weird quirk. And I'm not like camping out there all day, or I'm not staring at both of you, or, I mean, if you want to make it awkward the next time I meet you, that's fine. I think it's just I love sex. And I think it's just a curiosity of, me thinking that you probably do too, and y'all are doing it, and, but it's more of, like I said, a how do the pieces work of the personalities and the body and the physicality and everything that goes with it is why I'm thinking of you and your spouse. I don't know. Maybe it's just, frankly, it's just surface level. Maybe I'm just like, huh, because I'm sure everybody does it. Don't act like you don't do it. And I know it's not the trait of a psycho killer, because one time my in-laws asked us to all come over and help them butcher chickens, and I couldn't do it. That chicken looked me in the eye, and I was like, I can't kill you. So I know I'm not a psycho. I went down this rabbit hole, and I wasn't going to go alone, so I thought I would share it with you. You're welcome. The next time I see you, I'll be seeing you.